Welcome to the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. I am your host, David Riddle. My guest this week has been on a couple of times before. Once we did a deep dive into his background, how he went from working on cars to being a full time instructor. Now he owns his own place, building bays on his range, doing pro am stuff. He is busy, busy, busy. He was even on here to talk about virtual reality once. So, if you would join me in welcoming back to the show, Mr. Tim Herron.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
I guess you heated up the shooting world today, so we're gonna chat about it.
Strange.
So
Yeah.
now we were talking before we went live. You posted something today. I guess you shot the IPSC Extreme over the weekend.
I did.
Okay. And you posted something about making sure you get your hits. And I
Yep.
guess that has stirred up a lot of debate.
Yeah, it's just, this is something that I look at every single match, and not just like my own scores or my, kind of reflecting or introspect on my own performance, but also, also amongst the other divisions, other categories and everything, just to kind of see how particular matches trend or how performances trend. I'm super interested in that stuff, and kind of nerd out over the numbers. And it was just interesting over the course of this weekend that, again, like everything kind of follows, the priority of points first, even if it happens to be at a slight expense of time. Now, this isn't me saying slow down to get your hits. What this is me saying is, like, shooters, especially top shooters in the sport, that tend to strike a little bit, like that. Should I say strike? Tend to balance themselves just a touch more on the prioritization of points, historically do better in matches than those that are just focused on, I've got to go fast regardless of anything else, and it comes at the expense of points. Now, granted, nobody here is saying to slow down to get your hits, and nobody is saying speed up to outrun your misses or your mistakes, right? It's understanding that we've got to be able to strike a balance between the two. But for some reason, the internet's like up all in an uproar. I think the last time I checked that post, I don't even know how many comments there were on it, but it's obviously been shared 100 plus times too. And I've had a few, private message conversations with a few guys, they're wanting to kind of quantify their thoughts on it. And they're like, "Ow, what you're saying, what you're advocating is to slow down to get your hits." And I'm like, where did that even come out of my mouth or through my fingers on the keyboard? That it, like, all I was simply doing was noting, and showing everybody that, like, the guys that historically do really, really good at matches, especially consistent performers, balance, like really strategically balance points, probably above a little bit of pure speed. And it shows. I mean, the greatest shooter to walk the earth right now, right? And has for 30 plus years is Eric Raffel. And everybody uses him as an anomaly, not as the standard, which I I find that kind of funny, that people are so quick to dismiss his performance, like, well, Eric's a freak, or, well, Eric's the anomaly. Like, no, Eric is the gold standard at which everything else we look at needs to come into context. So, and a lot of this was also from my experience this past week, also training with Eric over the course of 2 days prior to shooting the IPSC Extreme. So, like, this is my second time, second year in a row to train with Eric and really get his thoughts and, kind of discipline on training and what we need to prioritize. And it's just funny that, like, the observations and things I took away from him in class versus the observations that I'm seeing, from the match, were just like, yep, they completely align. Like, the guy's not kidding. That if you're not
Yeah.
prioritizing your points, then the speed really doesn't mean as much as we think it does.
Well, and I had made a comment that I was doing a deep dive into this, and it was completely unintentional. It was not. It was an unintended consequence of a spreadsheet for a different reason, because I was looking at what is really the difference between major scoring and minor scoring. So I started doing optics division stuff where I
Hmm.
could compare um, open to the other three optics divisions. So at least it's somewhat apples to apples. I could convert open scores to minor scoring,
Hmm.
and then I'd have something to compare it to. Well, I started noticing exactly what you're saying. And I look at it like this right now in the US, Christian Seiler is on his way to becoming the American version of Eric Graffel.
100%.
I
100%.
think in any match he's in, he is the favored one. As long as he doesn't have a mechanical failure like he did at Carry Optics Nationals in 2024,
Hmm.
he hasn't lost since what 2022 to Aaron Edens, when I guess he was sick at that Open Nationals.
Yeah,
But
I can't remember the circumstances behind it. But I just he didn't
there was
shoot a
something,
super strong match, you know, and it
right?
is what it is. And then of course, what was it? 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, he goes to Thailand and crushes everybody. You know,
Exactly.
yeah,
But if you exactly what you're saying, Eric Graffel had 87% alphas at Carry Optics Nationals in the year that Christian had his mechanical failure with his dot. So, and even Jay Beal he was what, second on the American side, and he was 87% also.
correct.
I mean, Gino Edsel, or Edsel Gino,
Hmm.
that dude is so fast,
Oh yeah,
ridiculously fast. 10 seconds faster than Eric
and
was,
Eric,
but he only had 81% alphas compared to 87%. So even the 10% was not fast enough to overcome the amount of. I mean, look, Eric didn't even have a Delta or a mic at that
right.
match.
And that's the big thing too, Dave, to think
It
about as well.
is.
It's not just the alpha count, but it also has to do with, obviously conserving or eliminating penalties, and shooting well within your means of control, right? Like, and I've even heard Eric say the same thing too. Like, can deltas or can a delta be acceptable? If it fits the mathematics, then absolutely. If it doesn't fit the mathematics, then you do everything in your power to correct that delta or to correct that mic. But there are times like the stage and the mathematics of the hit factor in that stage would quantify. Not saying that okay, it allows you to make those mistakes, but those mistakes aren't as self-destructive as they are on say lower hit factor stages where those mistakes would absolutely, that's the detonation button to your performance. So it's understanding the mathematics of like when those mistakes are permissible, right, and when they're absolutely not, and then understanding how you have to have the discipline to adhere to that mathematics. And I know of two shooters outright that understand the mathematics and understand discipline. Number one being Eric, number two being Christian. Like Christian understands the mathematics probably as well as Eric does, and that's the thing. If you watch how Christian shoots, Christian is extremely, I don't want to say methodical, but he's very calculated. He knows exactly where he's willing to induce risk, and he knows exactly where he's going to conserve risk, as does Eric. Where the rest of us mere mortals, so to speak, sometimes don't have a good, like, we don't have a good judgment sometimes of how to conserve energy or conserve mistakes, and that's where mistakes happen. And it's all of us learning to do the thing that, let's say, Eric has figured out over 30 years, and then you look at like Christian, who's been able to figure that now over the last, what, 10, ever since, I'd say what Christian's been at least 10 or 8 years, like he's been extremely well versed and calculated in how he shoots.
Right. Yeah. 2019 would have been the year that he won all the area
Yeah,
matches
all
and
area.
nationals.
Yep.
So that was his coming out party.
Hmm.
And then he really hasn't looked back since then.
Yeah.
So, But it makes you wonder too, like he was very young. I want to say he was just starting college or he was in college at the time.
Something like
And
that.
then, yeah, he was very young. And also, Eric was what, 16 when he won his first world title?
Correct. The
So,
other thing you got to look
what?
at too, though, look at Open beyond 2023. Right? Like if you were just to tally up the overall results in Open since Christian's been shooting, there used to be a time when you could look at Open results 10 years ago and Open could be won with like 88 to 90% of the points being shot. And it all boiled down to who was the fastest guy, in the match. And that has not necessarily been the case, especially I think with if I remember correctly, Christian's first two national championships in Open, he was not the fastest, but he was the most accurate, and his being most accurate and most calculated earned him the number one spot, second to whoever took second or third, who may have been faster, but they weren't as accurate. So, like as Christian has understood and knows the game, like Christian has kind of flipped open on its lid too, to where no longer is it about just who is the raw time champ. It's who is the most balanced shooter, and that's who's going to win.
Well, and you can look right here 2024 limited optics.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob was almost 7 seconds faster than
Mm-hmm.
Christian. But again, Christian had more alphas, fewer Charlies, fewer deltas, fewer Mikes.
Correct.
He wins. He's more accurate, even though he's 7 seconds slower.
Right.
So there
Right.
is that balance. And that's where I started going, what in the world?
Yeah.
And you notice that speed can kill, but speed can also be suicidal.
Yeah.
you know?
So the other
and
things to think about on this too, though, right, is everybody talks about like, well, you know, time is points. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, the way the mathematics work, points also equal time, or points lost equals time lost. And nobody wants to have that conversation because it goes against, it kind of disassembles a lot of people's beliefs where it's like, I just need to push faster, 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 and then the hits will come. Okay, now we got a training paradigm issue that we've got to kind of sort out. How how much do you keep pushing speed until you kind of have to relinquish a little bit of speed to regain control, right? Like there has to be an effective balance between the two. But nobody takes a look at, I say nobody, Eric does. I know Christian does. I have
yeah.
been the last couple of years, and there's a quite a few of us. I'd say probably a good 20 to 30, you know, folks out there that have been shooting this game for quite a significant amount of time that are really looking in depth at the numbers themselves to learn how to play the game better and understanding the scoring system, right? Like I said, points equal time as well. So points you're not shooting, there's time attached to those points just as much as there's points attached to the time that you're trying to chase as well. And as Eric has kind of told everybody, like especially in classes, that the thing that we are ultimately in control of more than anything else isn't the time, but it's the points that we either choose to shoot or choose not to shoot, right? And that's to me that was
That's
just such a like mind-blowing statement to think about. Like, what's
deep.
the one thing that we control? Like, we're holding the gun and we're pressing the trigger and we're aligning the sights on the target, right? In various orders. So, like, that's ultimately the only fate that we truly have control over. We can't control what another competitor's time is going to be, just like time for us is a byproduct of our ability to effectively control the points. And, like, what's easier? Collecting three more alphas or trying to find another, say, 6 to 8 tenths of a second on a stage? I would say it's easier to collect three more alphas if the points that you're shooting aren't going to get the job done in the speed that you're shooting already. Like, how the hell are you going to try to find another 6 tenths or 8 tenths of a second on a stage if you're relinquishing more than like what the stage will allow in points? It's like, okay, now no longer are we prioritizing speed. We've got to prioritize a higher value on the points collection to stave off the hemorrhage that's going to happen when we go faster than we need to.
And this is where I highlighted these boxes because when I
Mm-hmm.
started converting open, so major scoring to minor scoring, it really popped up.
Oh
Like
yeah.
like right here, John Vlieger in 2023, he was second to Christian in
Mhm.
open at nationals, and he actually had 5 more total points than Christian in major scoring. When I converted it to minor, he was down 21 points. And it was interesting, but John had fewer alphas. And then when I converted it to minor, if you convert stuff to minor, it
Oh yeah.
really shows how it's affected. Same thing was here. Like Lescar or Murdoch Lescar was third.
Hmm.
Brian Jones was fourth. Brian had more alphas, but yet he was down 14 points in major scoring. When you converted everything over to minor, he
He
was
was.
actually 2 points ahead,
Yeah.
and he had a higher alpha count. So that's where I was like, wait a minute, what in the world is going on here? And it really made me start thinking. I was like, holy crap, there is definitely a balance, and you've got to know what the balance is. And it's not, it's like you're saying, it's not slowing down to get your hits, but it's not being suicidal with the speed.
Exactly. Exactly.
And somehow Eric and, like you said, Christian, they have got it figured out. Eric more than anybody.
Right. The name of the game is to collect a higher number of points, obviously in a faster amount of time than your competitors. But
Right.
like how does hit factor work? Is it time divided by points? A lot of us make the mistake of thinking that time is more significant than the points, and we try to do the math based on time. And time divided by points does not make hit factor. It's total number of points, right? That is the most important number, right, of everything, right? It is the numerator, the most important number in the division process. Numerator divided by the denominator gives us the hit factor or points per second. So, first of all, we've got to collect a higher number of points. Secondly, the shift then becomes in a shorter amount of time than our competitor. But if the higher number of points is significantly higher than our competitor, then we've got some buffer room in the time, right, in the denominator to make that to create the hit factor to be higher than our competitors as well.
Right. And it's striking that balance without
100%.
sacrificing
But the
being
balance
produced.
itself has to start with points. It has to.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I was, while you're talking, I was trying to, I couldn't get to it fast enough. But let me, where are you at? Here? Come on. Jason Clark had posted, it was very interesting. He got a PCC stage win
Hmm.
because, and I don't remember what stage it was. I wish I could remember. Let me click on his name here real quick. Stage 2. And let's see, what was he? He was 19. No, I don't. Was that it? Yeah, I guess no. Maybe it was stage 22. Maybe that's the one I think that's the one he actually posted. And let me go to Max. And Max had 2 more Charlies than did Jason. So Jason got the stage win and Max was second. So it was a very short, as a 12 round little short stage.
Hmm.
And and he specifically said in his post, thank you, Max Leograndis, for getting a couple more Charlies to give me the stage win here. So it's like, again, short stage, they're both moving as fast as humanly possible, shooting as quickly as they can. But those 2 Charlies is what did it.
So here's the thing to consider, right? So let's do very, 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 very simple mathematics. So if a stage, let's say the stage winner on a particular stage let's say he shoots a 5 hit factor, meaning he is shooting an alpha for every second they're on stage, right? 5 points per second. So if you just do very, very basic, simple math, you can figure out what each Charlie cost you in time. So you would take 1 second divided by that 5 points per second. Every single point is worth 0.2 of a second. So shooting major, right? A Charlie or two, like a Charlie, that's 0.2 of a second. Can I overcome a 0.2 of a second deficit by going 0.3, 0.4, 0.5 faster? Sure. It becomes much harder to maintain that math, though, when a Charlie in minor scoring, because you're down 2 points, that Charlie's costing you 0.4 of a second.
Yeah.
So where do you find 0.4 of nearly a half a second over a competitor to overcome one Charlie that you shoot on a 5 hit factor stage? If you shoot 2 Charlies, now you're 0.8 of a second down. Right? At some point in time, that math still tallies the same even for major. It's not apples to apples, but it's very, very similar.
Right.
So when everybody at the top of the game, even in open, the difference, say, between, let's say, Christian and Aaron Edens is 2 Charlie on a short course. And let's just theoretically say it's a 5 hit factor, and they shoot it in roughly the same time. Even if Aaron went 0.3 faster than Christian, but he's got 2 Charlies, like he's still going to be down more time than what Christian was to gain that stage win. What would have been easier for him to do? To spend 0.02 of a second more to dial in the dot to the middle of the A zone instead of choosing a Charlie shooting an alpha in its place? Like where do you quantify where you have more control over, right? A delta, by the same token, in that 5 hit factor, right? A delta is down 3 points shooting major. So that's 0.6 you're down shooting major. So a delta that's suicide. But
that's your minor Charlie, yeah.
Shooting minor, that you're 0.8 down. You're almost a full second down for one delta. So in order to win the stage, you'd have to go at least a second faster than the stage winner, just to outrun that 0.8 of a deficit of the delta. So points have a time value as well. And again, points are so much easier to quantify the time with. So like in the instance, like you've tallied up an overall hit factor for major match performance, right? And in the case of, let's say, Open Division 2024, Christian had an overall hit factor of 7.8. So because Christian is the overall winner, basically he dictates that the entire matches were 7.8 points per second. So if you were to take that 1 second and divide that by 7.8, Christian has now dictated that every point shot or not shot, let's just take a look at it this way. Every point lost on a stage shooting major, is worth 0.13 of a second. Doesn't sound like a whole lot until you start tallying up how many Charlies is that? And then you start quantifying, okay, if his nearest competitor shot 10 more Charlies, that's 1.2 seconds. If they shot 20 Charlies, that's 2.4 seconds. To overcome those Charlies, they'd have to shoot 2.4 seconds faster overall.
And then how much is that Mike with a penalty?
Right.
Now you're crushed.
At 7 at a 7.8 hit factor at 0.12, right? So let's say, or 0.13. So 0.13 times 15 points. That Mike is 1.95 seconds of time.
Oof.
0.05 of a second away from 2. You may as well just round it up. It's 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Every mic that you shoot, since Christian has dictated in Open Division that major hit factor is 7.8, that means every single mic is worth 1.95 seconds. Could you have avoided the mic in less than 2 seconds of time?
I would hope so. For the love of God.
So think about that. Like,
at this point, I'll take the half second to not get a mic.
To avoid a lot of the mistakes that we're making. Now, granted, do mics still happen? Of course they do, right? But to avoid mics or avoid taking risk that may result in a mic, do you have the time to spare to avoid that mic? We'd like to believe, no, we don't. But the math says, yes, we do. We just choose
Right.
not to adhere to it. The guys that
Yeah.
do, Christian and Eric, that's why they are so dominant.
You made a comment earlier that they have the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're at, is it that the fact that they're at a point where they're not affected by outside pressure of keeping up with the Joneses, as they would like to say,
Oh,
where
I think
they're just like,
everybody.
I'm shooting my game. I'm disciplined enough to shoot my game.
And that. I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down for everybody, right? Whether we're talking about an Olympic athlete, like an Olympic swimmer, or another scored or timed event. Um, the goal becomes: do I have the discipline to not outrun my headlights? Right? Like if you quantified this even back to like Formula One or anything else, what has made Max Verstappen so dominant over the last 4 or 5 world championships or 4 world championships that he's won? He's been a very, very calculated driver. He knows exactly when he needs to push, and he knows exactly when he needs to just maintain equipment. So we look at shooters. If we put shooters in that same limelight, right? I think there's obviously a lot of confidence that goes with it. Like the more you win, the more confident you get at trusting your instincts. But and people like to say that all the time too. Like, well, Eric's so calculated. He knows exactly when to push, and he knows exactly when he can get off the throttle. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if we all were able to do that? And that's what I mean by discipline. It's having the discipline to
Right.
say, you know what, on this stage, the risk isn't worth the reward. I'm going to let Edsel Gino have this stage by zero point 0.3 of the hit factor, right? As Eric would say, and as he teaches in class, stay in the hunt. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put yourself out of the hunt on a multi-day match. You want to stay in the hunt as long as you can, 2, 3, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days on a world shoot, so that you're then in the correct position to then understand, do I need to push or do I need to let my competitors make mistakes on the high risk stages? And that again, that's a discipline in and of itself. To let everybody else, like swing for the home run and either strike out or foul out while you just sit back and go, okay, I know what I need to do now.
Right.
And like I said, the two best shooters in the world right now have that discipline. They have that discipline every time they step up to the plate.
They do. I had said before we started recording too, it's like Nils had made I heard overheard him. I think it was I was standing on one of the stages at Talladega one year, and the Super Squad was there. So I was hanging out watching the Super Squad shoot, and Nils was talking to somebody. You know how they have those little buildings, and they were standing underneath one of them.
Hmm.
And he said, "You shoot enough Charlies, and you've basically shot a Mike."
Oh yeah.
And I had never heard anything like that up until then. And that made me start thinking, "Whoa, I had not considered that." But if you do, it's exactly what the math you were doing earlier.
Seven
Math.
Charlies. Seven Charlies is 14 points down. If a Mike is 15 points, then seven Charlies is the same as having no Charlies but having a Mike,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
Five Charlies is the same as a no shoot. If a no shoot penalty is 10 points, five Charlies is 10 points, right? The math is all the same. But people they don't want to learn or understand the math because they have this preconception that it's a speed game with a little bit of shooting sprinkled into it, until at some point in time you got to come under the realization that you cannot continue to push fast enough with that many allowable mistakes and be at the pinnacle. You just can't.
Right. Going back to the Extreme Open and stage 22, I mean, I don't think you can get much closer than they did. Jason was 32 one hundredths of a second slower, but he only had one Charlie, whereas Max had three Charlies. So those two Charlies were more time lost than the time that Jason took to get alphas.
Right.
Exactly what you were saying.
So 11.7 hit factor, right? We go back and just
Yep.
you reverse engineer the math. So 1 second divided by that 11.7 points per second. Each point down is worth 0.085. So round that up to 0.09. So that means a Charlie is worth 0.18 of a second.
And
0.18,
he
almost
had and he
2.
had two more, which was 0.36.
Correct.
And he was 0.32 seconds slower. So he won that by 0.04 seconds.
Yep.
There you go. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can just do that rapidly at the stage, you're like, oh, I just need to shoot this and I'll be good.
So here's the like go back and look at that in classic division, and I'll use myself and Jay Lease as the prime on this because we shot it within 1/100th of a second of each other on that same stage, stage 22. I shot
Oh,
it
okay.
3.0 with one Charlie, and she shot it in 6.29, practically 6.30 with 12 alpha because she shot all alphas. Right, she's at a 9.5 hit factor. I'm at a 9.2. I gave up 2.1 points on that stage,
Wow.
which was the exact cost of what? The Charlie. The Charlie cost me 2 points, and
Yep.
there it is right there, right? The points also include time. In order for me to outrun that Charlie, I'd have had to have shot a basically a 6.19 just to match her time or just to match her hit factor.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that was a short, fast little stage, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, lots of them.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's because
The
IPSC falls
3-2-1.
3-2-1, right? So
Yeah.
you figure, gosh, how many stages was that? A third, well over a third of them, half of them. Take that back. Half, over half the
Were
match was short courses.
okay. Hmm. So this would beg the question then. I mean, when Eric works with people over here, he seems to do this every January right after Shot Show.
Uh huh.
He does this. But he's not working with new shooters. He's working with experienced shooters.
For the most part, yeah,
Right. You work with everybody.
I do.
So for you working with newer competition shooters, how do you get this point across that, yes, it is kind of what Steve Anderson says at the same time too. You know what I mean? He's like, don't slow down and get your hits, but don't disrespect the target.
Yeah. So
So there's
I do simplify the math, and there's a lot of, I mean, there's a few people out there, a few naysayers, other instructors that are like, man, people, instructors or coaches that teach hit factor mathematics, even at the basic level, are doing their students a disservice. You just need to, teach them how to hit the target fast. And it's like, yeah, but all bets are off when you're not just standing in front of one static target at 7 yards. Like all the bets are off when you have to shoot a 25 to 30 round stage. So, and you're mixing everything from, throttle control to transitions to shooting on the move to, to activator sequences and things like that. And like, you're not in a day and a half's time by the time that we get around to doing dynamic type stuff in my class. A day and a half isn't enough time to really embed great foundational skill sets into a shooter in basically 12 hours of time out of a 16-hour, to 8-hour day training session, right? You're hoping to be able to fit a couple of the missing pieces in and get them foundationally somewhat squared away. And then it's up to you and it's up to the student to understand again how to quantify where that balance lies for them. So if we spent the entire first day just learning how to go as fast as we can, okay, guys, we're all going to do bill drills for 8 hours, and you're just going to learn how to just rapidly press and release the trigger as fast as you can. And then I put them on a stage the next day and just said, okay, there's your strategy. You want to every single target, you're just going to try to shoot as fast as you did bill drills the day before. Would I be setting up students for failure or success? I'd be setting them for failure
Yeah.
hugely because they don't have the understanding of the basics of the game. And the game means you first got to understand the scoring system. You couldn't teach somebody the game of football without them understanding that, hey, a touchdown is 6 points, not 7, right? An extra point's worth 1 point. If you want to go for, 2 extra points, then you got to there's other things that have to happen. Like understanding the scoring system is the same as understanding the rule set itself. And so teaching somebody how to go fast without an understanding of the scoring system, to me, leads students completely astray to where the only thing that they're thinking about is, how do I go faster? How do I go faster? How do I go faster? And then it becomes my job to say, oh, hold your horses there, hero. You're going fast, way faster than you need to. Now let's try to put the balance of points back into perspective here. So am I teaching Eric Graffel PhD level mathematics, to, let's say, a 6-month-old shooter, or a D class, C class guy? Man, it would be completely lost on them to talk about like scaling an 8 hit factor stage and what the hit factor mathematics become versus when they scale it to a 12 hit factor stage, or you scale it down to a 4 hit factor stage. So I avoid all that confusion altogether. But I do kind of utilize, again, just what we talked about, the 5 hit factor rule, right? Like if everybody understands, if you're collecting 1 alpha per second, right, that's 5 points per second. That means that every point or every Charlie that you're shooting is costing you 4/10 of a second if you're shooting minor. It's costing you 2/10 of a second if you're shooting major. So it's understanding at least a little bit to, with the knowledge of, hey, every time that I'm not pressing the trigger and scoring an alpha, it's costing me time, because everybody tries to quantify their performance on time alone. And then they're like, well, I can't believe it. I was super fast, but I still finished 10th overall at my local match. Well, yeah, because you gave away 72 Charlies, 12 Deltas, 4 Mikes, and 2 no shoots. You could have been the fastest guy there and you still wouldn't have finished better than third, because all of the time you're losing in the mistakes of the points that you're not shooting. And so that's an easy way to get people to understand it. And then when they just begin to understand, just again, the basic level of things in that balance, then they can start to go into a stage. And we do a lot of stage shooting and stuff on day 2 in my class. They go into being able to understand and shoot the stages with a little bit more knowledge on, hey, I need to conserve risk here, and I might exploit some risk there. What is the risk reward balance here, and how do I strike that balance between both? How do you have your proverbial cake and eat it too? Right? Because it's not mutually exclusive. It's not go fast and hope that your points will be there, but it's not slow down and just focus on the points. It's how do I strike that very delicate balance between both of them? Can I go faster, but can I also collect points at the same time? And a lot of times you can, if you know where to apply that risk or where to apply that methodology. And a lot of times, like I said, I think many coaches are doing students a disservice by not at least introducing them to just a rote understanding, a basic understanding of the scoring system, so that they can start to take away not only the knowledge of the scoring system for stages or for matches. Think about how well that understanding of the scoring system would lend itself to them in practice. And being able to understand that every drill that you do, if you apply hit factor to it, right? If I applied even hit factor to a bill drill, at some point in time, you're going to have to stop telling yourself that, oh, I broke 2 seconds, even though I shot 3 Charlies. Yeah, but the hit factor says 3 Charlies in under 2 seconds is still Like that's a no-go. So stop chasing more time. Let's put the points back into play. Or if you're shooting 100% of points all the time, knowing then where you need to step on the throttle and when you've stepped on the throttle too much. Again, you're learning to strike that balance. And that's how people start practicing more purposefully. That's when you really start to see the gears turning in people, and they start moving up the leaderboard. They go from C class to B, from B to A to M to GM.
Yeah, you basically confirmed when in my mind I'm thinking I don't know how you would teach a new shooter this, and you basically said it by saying, well, you can't. You can give them
You
an
give them a little
intro,
bit,
right? You
right?
give them an intro into it, but that's about it. When I again, I'm going to go back to Nils for a minute. Um, because the first time I had him on, we talked for like an hour on the podcast and we stopped the recording and we talked for like another 2 hours afterward. And I mean, I was kicking myself for having turned off the recording. But, one of the things I asked him about was I was like, I think that was when I asked him, had he thought about doing any teaching? He said, no, there are better people out there than me. I'm not good at teaching people how to do this. But I went on to say, well, I said, what about a strategy class? Because I see that being a huge benefit separate of all this other stuff. Like your day to day, your meat and potato courses,
Uh-huh.
this would be completely separate where your masters and your your newer grandmasters,
Yep.
they have the skills, but they don't understand the game enough
I
to
have I
really.
I have a
Okay,
one-day clinic that's all we focus on is understanding how to play the game, the mathematics. And it's shooting stages, it's predicting hit factor ahead of time. And it's not predicting hit factor so that you can predict what your score needs to be. It's predicting hit factor so you can understand again that balance of risk reward.
right,
Like if I understand the hit factor, then I understand what every point value is worth in time. And then I can start again to quantify, okay, two Charlies is too many on this because I can't outrun, the stage is too short. There's not enough time available to outrun two Charlies at whatever this hit factor is. Or, okay, on this hit factor, like this stage has got a higher hit factor and there's a lot of different positions in movement. Yeah, I could let go of a couple of extra Charlies or maybe even a Delta if the risk, the reward is such that I can shoot the stage a full second faster by, say, not waiting on a second, a second exposure on a swinging target, or not waiting on this, or not posting up to shoot that, shooting it on the move and accepting maybe a lesser value hits on that target. Not Mike's, right? Not misses, but
right.
you're understanding where would you completely avert risk, or where would you accept risk? It's to build more knowledgeable shooters.
Right. And you hear people at matches be like, "Oh, this is a 32 round course. You're gonna have a lower hit factor, so make sure you get your points." You
Hmm.
know. But again, that doesn't mean on the 9 hit factor that you're dropping Charlie's, because as you showed, that still matters.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's an interesting. You hear certain things, you see certain things, but it's way more complex than meets the eye. I mean, you've got to dig. And like I said, had I
That's the
not
thing. The
started,
dip. It's just the interest in the numbers, Dave. I mean, you did it yourself. Like as you started looking more, you're like, holy crap, that's really interesting. I wonder if, and then right, and I do the same thing after every match, not just like evaluating my performance, like where I could have been more aggressive and where I needed to possibly be maybe just a little more conservative, or where I was striking the good balance. But I also look at all the other results too, because I do find it interesting. It's like, what are the trends? Like
yeah,
am I adhering to the trends the way they need to be, or did I not? Or did other shooters not? And it's funny when you can kind of have the answer for somebody in their own shooting that maybe they're not even aware of yet. They're like, oh God, I was 12 seconds off the pace. And it's like, you can go back and look at their scores and be like, yeah, you might have been 12 seconds off the top time, but holy hell, man, you were 35 Charlies, 7 Deltas, and 4 Mikes away from getting the results that you wanted. How about we correct that stuff first?
Well, here I'm going to give you a personal example. I just shot my first local match in 3 years because of my knee issues, and I shot slow, and I am no longer going to be competitive because I can't move like I used to be able to move now. Um, the person who was one place behind me at the match was roughly 40 seconds faster than me.
Oh, do
But
tell.
he
Do
but he
tell.
had he had 6 misses, a no shoot, and 12 more deltas.
Yeah.
I had no misses. I had 6 deltas, so I had some sloppy. And I used that to just go back, look at my numbers, and like, okay, and I knew, like, after some stages, I was like, man, that was a little sloppy. I gotta be a little bit more, observant and patient. And what I was saying to myself is like, it's visual patience that you're lacking.
Yeah.
First time back in 3 years, I have some visual impatience. So I was like, okay, I can deal with that. But that was perfect case in point. The dude was 40 seconds faster than me, but he had a lot more slop.
So we call that, right, and we use that term a lot because it sounds sexy, visual patience. What is visual patience? One word, discipline.
Yes.
You either tell yourself, I am going to wait for the sights to be in the spot on the target I need them to be, and I'm going to do my due diligence to press the trigger without interrupting that sight picture all the way through the trigger press, or I don't. Right? The visual patience is just a fancy way of saying you either exude the discipline or you don't.
Or you do not.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So I mean, and there are times it goes back to this too. Like, have you ever shot a match at a local match and that you were really happy with your results because you adhered to the discipline that you wanted to have on that match, contrary to any of what your actual results were? You just walked off the stage without ever looking at results, or walked off the entire match and went, I shot a hell of a damn good match today. Even if you look back at the results, you were like, that really wasn't the result I was looking for. Did you feel good? Or were the results of your shooting matching what you had kind of set yourself up for beforehand? And I can tell you in my own shooting, whether it's club matches or even at, let's say nationals or area matches, I've had matches where I have, without ever looking at the scores, been like, I shot the best damn match I possibly could shoot. Scores be damned. I've also had matches where I looked at the scores and I've won the match and I'm like, that was some of the worst freaking shooting I have ever done. I'm not happy. And people will be like, yeah, but you just won, Tim. And like, yeah, but my performance was atrocious. Right. And that to me, that's the difference between
Yeah.
discipline and undisciplined, you know? And a lot of guys, they're happy to win undisciplined, but they're also not happy to lose being disciplined. And at some point in time, you've got to be able to make the amends that, like, as long as I'm being disciplined, I'm shooting the best match I can. I'm shooting the best performance I can. If that means that somebody might have snuck in there and got ahead of me, then sometimes you got to chalk that up to maybe they took a chance I wasn't willing to take, or maybe they saw something I didn't quite see, right? Maybe they lacked some discipline and they got lucky. We all know, right? At some point in time in the upper echelons of the sport, probably I'd say the top 10 shooters are capable of winning the match, but there's always that one guy that's got 5% more luck than the other 9 people. I saw that in race car driving for a number of years too. It's like, man, someday I'll be the dude with the 5% more luck. You
Well,
know,
I'm sure it's similar in race car driving too, then, where there are certain tracks that just fit that driver's
absolutely.
abilities much better. And sometimes you go to a match and I was talking to Mason recently, and he was like, "This, it was Worlds." He's like, "Man, this match is my kind of match. It fit my strengths." So
Mhm.
now you're calling him world champion.
Right. That's exactly.
So he was confident. He went in there. It matched his strengths. So everything aligned. I mean, he's obviously got the skill. That was never in doubt. But I mean, you can my point here is that you can go to a match. You can walk off third place saying, I shot 100% exactly the way I wanted to.
Mhm.
Maybe it just matched the other twos, or one of the other issues, or one of the other reasons you mentioned.
Yep.
So I
Absolutely.
would much rather walk off knowing I shot 100% of what I'm capable of doing than, yeah,
Even if it meant defeat, right? Even if that meant
yes.
somebody placed higher than me, so be it. I am happy with what I was capable of doing today. Yeah. Like I said, there have been times I've won matches and I'm like, God, that was a sorry excuse for shooting. I just happened to get lucky on that, but I'm not satisfied with it.
But I think we also know that third place Tim, who shot 100% of what he could do, and replace his name with anybody, he's going to be more consistent. So
Oh,
he's going to be consistently at the top, whereas Mr. Lucky, who won, might be 8th or 10th of next year because it's not going to work out every time.
that's right. That's right. So, but yeah, like I said, like the numbers, like looking more in depth at the numbers like this, just like I find it extremely interesting. And like I said, posting that, it was not ever to throw shade on anybody, but it was just so funny how many people kind of tell on themselves just because they see something that they may or may not agree with, and then it's like, then they're trying to skew the numbers to fit whatever dystopian future that they want to believe. And it's like, that's not how that works. You don't get to twist the numbers to fit your to kind of fit
Well,
whatever.
what was it, Mark Twain, who said there are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics?
Hmm.
you know? So, I mean, you can make statistics say what you want, but I
Right.
mean, these are just straight numbers
Like
here.
to justify an argument, like,
So,
oh,
yeah,
you're saying to slow down. No, I'm not saying to slow down. What I'm saying though is somebody that's a little more balanced on, hey, I'm going to prioritize the points, may have not been the fastest shooter amongst the top three that I'd kind of highlighted the scores, but they certainly weren't the worst shooter of those three shooters either. And
right.
that was the thing to key in on. But again, people be people, and
Well, let's go to. I'm going to look at the Extreme Open. Well, that doesn't help me much. Okay, let's go to a different division. Mike Wang just ran away with freaking Open, so that didn't help the discussion at all. Okay, here's one. I just pulled up optics, which was funny. Mason said he's going to shoot optics so he could lose to Eric Graffel. That was pretty funny. But Mason being second, Ashton Hammond was third, and he was 10 seconds faster than
correct,
Mason.
correct.
But he also had 52 fewer alphas.
That's right. That's
So
that's the critical component. They both had roughly the same number of penalties. Mason had a mic and a no shoot, and Ashton had two no shoots.
there you
Mason
go.
only had
Yeah.
5 deltas. Ashton had 20 deltas.
Yes. And he also had what? 38 more Charlies. 38 more Charlies, 15 more Deltas. So
15,
yeah, I'm
15 more deltas. So let's just look at just the 15 more deltas. That's 15 times 4 points down. He gave up 60 points just in deltas. Ashton did,
wow.
right? So, I mean, at that point, you look at it, 10 seconds, but 10 seconds wasn't enough to outrun the points detriment.
And he lost by 61 to he
Mhm.
lost second place by 61 points.
Mhm. The deltas in and of themselves, almost,
Made it.
were the difference.
Yeah. It would only take what, one Charlie, maybe a couple. It wouldn't take many Charlies beyond that to then
Yeah.
be
Like I
out.
said, that's 15 deltas at 4 points apiece, right? Because that's what you're losing. So that's not saying Ashton couldn't shoot any deltas. That just meant Ashton, if he shot 15 fewer deltas and let's say one less Charlie, he would have beat Mason.
Hmm. But then that would have altered his time a little bit.
Are you sure? Does it have to? And
No, no, you're right. No, it
that's
doesn't have to.
that's where people screw up. They think that
Yeah.
the trade-off is going to be this significant amount of time to gain those points back. So you mean to tell me that it would have cost you even, let's say, 3/10? Is it going to cost you 3/10 of a second per delta that you don't shoot to correct that delta into an alpha? I'm going to call BS on that. Like
Yeah, it doesn't
I've
take
been in
that
the
long.
sport too long. I've been shooting too long. I know what refining the sights to a more acceptable level actually costs. And it's in the hundredths of a second. Point oh, insert
Something.
a number here. Hundredths
Right.
of a second, not tenths of seconds, and definitely not full seconds
Oh no.
to correct a
I
delta to an alpha, or not even to correct it, but to align the sights to it to an acceptable A versus misaligning the sights and accepting a delta. We're talking hundredths of a second. So let's say it was 300ths, okay, we'll go out on a limb. Let's say 600ths of a second to correct 15 of those deltas.
That's 0.9 seconds.
Zero point 0.9,
That's it.
right? So let's say we had Ashton on this panel tonight, and Ashton says, "Man, I lost it because I made too many mistakes." And you and I were both able to tell him, "Yeah, dude, you lost it by 15 deltas." And if he said, man, I really would have had to slow down to get my hits. If we would have asked him right now, would you be willing to give up, let's say, a full second of your 10 seconds to correct those deltas? Would you have done it? I don't think a person in their right mind would say, nope, wouldn't do it.
Definitely not.
It doesn't take a
Yeah,
lot.
they'd all say, "Yep, I'll take that."
Exactly.
It goes back to the discipline,
It's discipline.
the visual patience discipline. Yeah, because I know for me it was uh, primarily my second shot, not being patient enough to let that dot get back towards the middle of the target before I pulled the trigger again.
Mm-hmm.
So live and learn.
Well, then
Eric,
when you really render it down, right? 20 deltas over 30 stages is 0.66 of a delta every stage. So basically 2/3 of his stages had a delta on them. If you wanted to align it that way, and some of those stages, a lot of those stages, all of the short courses, absolutely one delta is not even allowed on them. And I didn't go back and look at all of those. How many short courses did he allow a delta to happen?
yeah, and you almost have to throw Eric out because
You can't.
he was. I
You
know you
can't.
can't.
You
You can't.
absolutely can't. People use
But
Eric as the excuse of he's the anomaly instead of no, Eric is the freaking standard. We've got to
agree.
stop putting Eric on this pedestal that what Eric does isn't what everybody else does. You know what? What Eric
Then
does
everybody else is
is
wrong.
why Eric is who he is versus everybody else. If you're going to quantify yourself compared to everybody else, you've got to include Eric. If you don't, then again, like you're trying to skew the results to fit your agenda, and you're being dishonest to yourself as a shooter. If you're like, yeah, well, Eric's a freak. Eric's not a freak. Eric is more calculated and more averse to risk than you. Period. Period. He's
Yeah.
still a human being, still capable of making mistakes, but he understands the rules of this game better than anybody.
Yes. And but again, going back to what we were saying earlier, Christian's the next one.
Yeah, Christian's already there. Christian just doesn't have, what would it be, 25 years more experience yet. Yet
Right.
being the key word.
All right, I'm going to give you another example. I mean,
Let's do it.
It's almost like every division has the exact same example.
It's weird, right?
Edsel Gino. Edsel Gino was 14 seconds slower than Jacob.
Yep.
Edsel won.
Yep.
But Edsel had 54 more alphas,
Yep.
35 fewer Charlies, 6
Yep.
fewer Deltas, 3 fewer Mikes.
Mm-hmm.
So everything beyond alpha, he had fewer. So he basically had fewer mistakes, if you want to call it that. He
Mm-hmm.
had more visual discipline for everything, even though it took him 14 seconds longer to
Mm-hmm.
do it. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right here. But look, I did not until I started. Look, my whole thing, and it's still going to come out. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers. I'm not a major scoring hit factor fan. I'm not asking to change it. I'm just saying
The math still works in major as well, though. Like I said,
it does.
go back and look at from 2020 on when Christian Seiler started winning nationals. Go back and look at Christian scores versus JJ or Christian versus whoever else was in second place that year to Christian, and look at who shot a higher percentage of points, and then look at who else actually shot a faster overall match. And the two are not necessarily the same person.
You know what? 2024 limited optics champion Christian Seiler had a better match than 2024 open division champion Christian Seiler.
Mhm.
Oh, I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
just when you didn't think it could get any better. But I, I mean, wow, that Jacob's fast. Every time I look at his times are faster than most everybody there.
absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, the dude is fast, but the the lower alpha count
Yep. The
crushed him.
proof's in the pudding, man. Raw time champ. It'll get you to second at 98% of the guy that's scoring 93% of the points.
Yeah. I mean, raw time champs gets you the same thing as the guy who has the most points shot, you know?
And again, what do
Uh,
you think is easier to do? To shoot on the absolute ragged edge of control for 30 plus stages, or to shoot well more into your means of control, even if that means you've sacrificed a little bit of pure raw time? Points are so much easier to collect than time, especially as you know. And David, you're no spring chicken, neither am I. I'll be nearly 50 this year, so
I don't know what gave that away.
I'm finding it harder and harder as I'm starting to get, more experienced in age. I'm finding it harder and harder to keep up with the guys that are half my age. So the
Yeah,
only way to stay relevant is I've got to shoot points. I've got to, it's even if it comes at the expense of some of my time. And it's not that I'm slowing down. That's the misnomer. People want to take it as this either or kind of thing, and that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm not going to, like, I try my damnedest to not to be undisciplined and shoot faster than what I'm capable of collecting points because they're
right.
so unbelievably important.
There are 111 people who showed up to shoot the match in production optics.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9 is spring chicken Phil Strader. And again, it goes back to what you're saying. You gotta there's a little sarcasm there. He's no spring chicken either.
Right.
So he's got to same thing. You've got to make sure you're getting what you need in order to be there. Because I mean, right there beside his name, senior.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. What was I trying to look at? Production here. I wonder what production looks like. Yeah, Michael Stepan. You have to go all the way. He won production. You have to go all the way down to number 9 to find somebody who had more alphas than him.
Right. And now again, this then goes
He
to,
was fast too. So
oh, you're sacrificing time to gain those alphas. We all know at the top of the sport, you've got to be both fast and accurate, right? And
right,
that's where again, I can no longer have that argument online with people when they're like, well, Tim, what you're basically advocating is to slow down and get your hits. Oh my God, no. Shut your mouth. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you are trying to strike a finer balance between the two, it ultimately comes down to who's scoring more points.
Oh, looky there. Austin Hull is with the AMU, and
On
he competed
standard,
in his first match. And he dominated standard too. Holy cow.
absolutely. 448 alpha, 88 Charlie, 11 Delta, 3 mics and a no shoot in 365 total seconds. Yeah. So when you're shooting major and you shoot 95% of the points, and you also happen to be the fastest out there in that field, that it pays
That
off big
doesn't hurt at all.
time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn but you've got to look and I didn't, but you've got to look into the results,
Yep.
not just look at the results, but you got to
Exactly.
look into the results to see what you're missing.
Hmm.
Luigi Lee shooting revolver. Holy cow. Hell has frozen over. Oh, that's funny.
But in this instance, so look at Daniel Polverini, right? He shot 517 total seconds to Luigi having 541 seconds. So Luigi was what, 20, 26 seconds
20
behind him?
yeah, about 24. Yeah.
24, 25 seconds behind him. But Luigi shot almost 20 more alphas and 20 less Charlies to be within 96, almost 97%.
He also had 6 more deltas.
Yeah.
And he had 3 no shoots. So yeah, he really again was that just visual patience,
Right.
Was
There's
that
a
discipline?
points, just the
Yeah.
points, just in the 3 mics and 3 no shoots, that would have been enough to probably, I'll bet you, overcome.
I mean, that's 60 points right there.
We can correct
What am
that.
I saying? 45, I'm sorry, 75 points.
And here's his other mic. Let's correct that just to see. And
Okay.
this is great. The power of
What if?
practice score competitor is being able to just see these things in real time.
Whoa, somebody had 9 procedurals. Yikes. And 25 mics. So somebody had a bunch of failures to shoot at. They had a mechanical problem,
So
clearly.
leaving Luigi with his 14 deltas, but just getting rid of the 3 mics and 3 no shoots, even at his 541 seconds, would have been enough to win production by four match points.
Whoa. Just getting rid of the mics and the no shoot. There you
Changing
go.
nothing about the speed, right?
Right.
Nothing
Keeping
about
the time the same.
That's correct.
That's nuts.
Mhm.
That's pretty crazy that you could be 24 seconds behind and just by basically shooting, when I say a clean match, no mics, just no
That's it.
mics, no shoots, and you can still win the thing. PCC optics. I'm assuming Max was the fastest. Oh yeah, he was definitely the fastest, and he's usually very accurate. Yep, he
Yeah.
was. Oh, holy cow! You have to go all the way down to 13th place to find someone with more Charlies than him. I didn't even look at irons. Oh, there was one guy. One guy shot PCC
One
irons.
guy. Ugh.
Well, you know what? He had 470 seconds, but he had 388 alphas and he won.
Yep.
He won PCC irons. Good job, guy. Now, what are your thoughts on this? I'm going to go a little astray for a moment. What are your thoughts on this new optics division?
I love it. If I'd have had just a few more weeks behind my gun, my limited optics gun, I would have shot that at this match. But considering it was an IPSC match, for me, just off of World Shoot, which was in September, and I had really been like strict adherence to Classic. It just didn't feel right to me to go shoot an IPSC match and not shoot like my home division. So, but yeah, I was missing it. I'm ready to shoot LO for the foreseeable future. It's the same thing. I mean, so IPSC optics is our USPSA LO with one little correction that all the magazines have to be behind the hip. You're not allowed to have a magazine to the hip bone. So I would have had to make like one little change to my belt setup, and I'd have been ready to go. But I like
Did
it.
I didn't even know that they had created it.
Hmm.
Uh, I just found out by accident.
Yep. So
Uh,
it's a provisional division this year in IPSC.
okay.
So, and
All
then again,
right.
it'll be just like USPSA. I believe it gets 2 years or 3 years consideration as a provisional, and then after that, then they'll make the vote, which we all know it's going to go. It'll become a full time deal. Whereas in USPSA, it was supposed to be 3 years provisional, and what was it after the first year, and 6 months into the second year, USPSA voted to make it a full on division. There was no denying the participation numbers were incredible.
Well, I assume your classes are in a way a mirror image of participation at
Oh God,
USPSA, mostly optics.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, I mean, it's five 5 to 6 years ago, it would still be a significant portion of like a significant balance of iron sights to optics. And now, I mean, it is if I get one student in a 12 to 13 person class that's shooting irons, I'm 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 blown away. I'm like, wow, somebody's still shooting irons. Even though I taught all my classes last year, I taught from behind my carry optics pistol, or not my carry optics, my classic division gun, my single stack, because I wanted to stay on the up and up and be prepared for world shoot. I did bring my
Right.
optics guns with me. Maybe sometimes I would teach like half a day with optics so that I could show people like, hey, I know how to shoot dot guns too, right? But yeah, for the most part, like I might have been the only dude shooting irons. So it's now it's God, probably 80 to 1 the amount of optic
Wow.
shooters I have in classes versus iron shooters.
Wow, that's massive.
Yeah, but I
I
predict in the next couple of years we're going to start to see people because there's some people that now have never spent any time behind an iron sight gun that are now kind of stepping into the fold of like, well, I've always shot dots, which is weird. Like I've been shooting since 2010, and like when dots became like the most prominent thing, it was like everybody's got iron sight experience, right? And we're all just on this bandwagon now of dots. No, there are people now that have entered the realm of shooting that have never even shot iron sights. I'm starting to see an uptick of people like that are like actually they'll email me and be like, "Hey, do you teach iron sight stuff too? Would I get anything out of your class if I brought an iron sight gun?" And I'm like to myself, I'm like, "Holy smoke, really?" Like, we're asking that iron sights, but yeah. So we'll start to
Now,
see, I think, an uptick in iron sight shooters in the next couple of years.
are those individuals who might use an iron sighted firearm for their work,
Could
or is
be.
this
Could be. Others
okay?
of it I think are just, hey, I've been shooting for the last 5 or 6 years, even in USPSA, and I've always been shooting optics. And I've decided to give production a try, or I've decided to give single stack a try, or I took my optic off my 2011 and thought maybe I would shoot limited for a few months, and it's like, yeah, I can help with that, you know. But it's funny how many people I see now that have zero experience behind an iron sight pistol. Zero.
Yeah, that's like you. I mean, I'm again, our age defies us, but yeah, I can't imagine people our age say, or even 10 years younger than us, saying I've never shot an iron sighted gun.
Right.
So
Right.
that is pretty wild. Now, I want to ask you another question, and it goes along with this stuff.
Okay.
Since you are a single stack classic shooting competitor,
Hmm.
what are you finding? I know you've shot minor and I know you've shot major.
Hmm.
If you had to choose one, which one? And I don't care about the major versus minor. I'm really looking at 9 versus 10 or 8 versus 9 or whatever it is. Which one would you choose?
10 rounds.
Okay, so you're
10 rounds
going
of minor
quantity.
versus 8 rounds of major. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can do so much more on stages that have more steel. So like stages that that may even be an array of say 8 rounds in USPSA that like that array might include two or three poppers on it though. Like to know that you cannot absolutely miss a single round like sits in the back of your mind when you're shooting major. And so you will 100% overconfirm the sights and overconfirm
Mm,
trigger press so as to avoid a standing reload where just having an additional 2 rounds in the gun. So you've got 10 plus 1 shooting minor. The amount of like subconscious confidence that goes on the back of your mind, like I don't have to be as, not saying you have to, I don't have to be as careful. It's not like you're not careful before, but I don't have to be so complicit to be afraid, like to shoot afraid. I can shoot with full confidence, knowing that I've got a couple of extra rounds in the gun to shoot that, to shoot those steel.
and that was going to be my follow up. Does it make you over confirm? And
Sure.
because I feel like it would. I
Absolutely.
absolutely feel like exactly what you're saying. Because I
Absolutely.
would do the same thing. Like, oh, I can't be in the white. I need to be in the middle of the white when I pull this trigger. You
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. And then like now, especially with almost everything in USPSA, American wise, USPSA, we're seeing so much more high round count stages, so many more field courses, especially local clubs and local matches, and even sectional and even some area stages where they're not quite under like that strict adherence of 8 rounds per array, where you're seeing a lot more of like, well, it's optional, right? Like there's 3 or 4 targets in this array of 12 shots, but those other 3 targets that are out there in the middle can be seen from this other location where, like you're seeing a lot more catering to high cap, like to high capacity divisions, where even having an extra 2 rounds in the gun, 10 rounds minor, 9 millimeter versus 8 rounds major, 40 or 45 in single stack being the big difference. Like just again, having the
Mm.
confidence, like
Uh,
I'm shooting as high capacity as I can get in the division. If you're shooting alphas, then you're going to shoot alphas regardless.
I while you guys are completely different from Revolver because their mechanics on that is so completely different. However, if you're shooting major, I feel like you guys are almost equal in quantity of ammo that you have in the gun at one time. But I feel like match directors are creating matches for production quantity or higher,
Correct.
not for single stack or revolver, which creates another problem, which would make me feel like another advantage of shooting minor in single stack.
Yep. It's the same thing. I mean, we saw the death of Revolver Major 10 years ago, right? I mean, it used to be the gun to have was a Smith & Wesson 625 and 45 ACP with moon clips. I mean, that's what Jerry Mitchell like won so many Revolver national championships with 6 rounds of major. And then the advent of was it the 927, which is an 8 round or 929, whatever that Revolver model is, that everybody is shooting now. That's 8 rounds of 9 millimeter. Like overnight, nobody is shooting 6 rounds major anymore. It was
Right.
absolutely it's that's old. It's old and busted. It's not even in the right playing field anymore. Whereas
Right.
single stack, 8 rounds major versus 10 rounds minor, like it's still great to have the discussion and have the argument, but in IPSC, the stages do tend to favor minor a little bit more. Now, I say that as a guy that finished in the top 10 and I shot minor, I would have finished, I think, seventh had I shot major. And the two US shooters that finished ahead of me, which was Jeff Cawthon and Jeremy Reed, were both shooting major. And World Shoot last year, the stages really favored for Classic Division, really seemed to favor major. There were a lot of wide open
Mm.
targets. There were very minimal poppers. Or, I'm sorry, very minimal partials. So, and there were a lot of kind of dead spaces in between target arrays to accommodate reloads. Where me
Mm.
and Elise both looked at each other like 3 stages in, and we were like, "Man, I wish we would have shot major." Just because it would have made more sense at that match. But that was the first World Shoot even listening to Jeremy Reed, who has shot multiple world shoots. That was the first world shoot that Jeremy could remember. He was like, man, there's minimal partials, there's minimal technical type shooting. Everything was just wide open boards. And, it really favored a kind of a go fast attitude where major scoring definitely had an advantage. But the guy overall that won Classic Division, the individual world championship, was still shooting minor.
Oh wow. Okay. So I want to throw another question out for you. What do you think about? I don't know that I'm a fan of this factory gun nationals and race gun nationals. What do you think about? Because I think there's too much of a mix of irons and optics. What do you think about an irons nationals and an optics nationals?
I think it would be a pretty darned okay idea. The problem with having an optics nationals, especially if you're going to have open carry optics, limited optics, and then obviously
PCC.
PCC as well, it would have to be open to at least 12 to 1300 competitors in order to fit everybody into that nationals. And unfortunately, I don't think we've got enough staff, nor do we have enough infrastructure nationally to make a match of that magnitude uh, kind of fit what they need. And then you'd look at the iron sight divisions, and we would be revolver. Uh, what would that be? Revolver, limited, single stack in production.
Right.
Uh, how many shooters do you propose that even show up at that match? And just to actually shoot iron sights, I would go out on a limb to say maybe 300 tops. I
Hmm.
don't think it would be a sellout match.
Okay. I
Now,
just feel. Go ahead.
I could be completely off base, but I don't think the draw would be there as much as it is for the optics high capacity divisions.
Well, I mean, if you look at the participation in major matches, it supports what you're saying.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think you might get a bump if there are no optics in the match. But again, I do agree. Like that one year, they didn't sell it out until they opened it up for limited optics, and that was 2024.
Yep.
And then
But
all of a
then,
sudden, boom.
unfortunately, what they do, then they changed the dynamics of the match. It was supposed to be an
Yep.
iron sight match, and then they ended up moving targets and adding hardcover partials to everything and pushing distance back to 35 to 45 yards, and it made the it made the match, dare I say, diabolical for iron sight shooters. I mean, to the point where
Right.
it was not fun. Like there was nothing. No matter who I talked to shooting iron sights, anybody asked, like, "Did you have fun at that match?" Or like, "Man, I was just happy to survive it." No, there was nothing about that match that was fun, and I think a lot of that got reported back to the powers that be at USPSA. And I think last year's nationals reflected a better blend. Especially with carry optics being part of factory gun as well. Like it was definitely a better blend of difficulty for both iron sights as well as optics. But that year before, it was like, oh, we're throwing optics in the mix. Push everything back, guys. And it was just like, man, if you were an iron sight shooter, it yeah, it was not fun. nobody
What?
nobody had a fun time at that match. Even if they shot well,
Yeah.
it wasn't a fun match.
Yeah. And I totally get that. That's why the mix of optics and irons I don't think is great,
Sure.
because you're going to have some stages that are more difficult for irons, and you have some stages that might be a little too easy for optics. You know what I mean?
Sure. But at the
So
same time, I
finding
mean,
that blend is hard.
the same would be said for area matches, sectional matches, state championship matches, or even local club matches. Like ultimately, we all got to shoot the same stages, and you just see the disparity in time or score between, let's say, a low cap irons division versus a high cap optics division. And it is what it is. And that's where, like IPSC, like in IPSC, there is no combined overall because it doesn't exist. Like you shoot your division and your division is scored amongst your division. That's why combined overall isn't even recognized. And we in USPSA, we still like to look at the combined overall. Well, how did me and single stack minor. How did I stack up against my buddy who was shooting, limited optics? And it's like, it's an apples to pomegranates comparison. They're not
Yeah.
even they're not even on the same plate.
No, no, they're not. You're
But
right.
we can't help, we can't help ourselves.
I know. That's what my whole table started as. Like, what if I did this? Can I come up with an overall winner if I change everything to minor?
Right.
So, but yeah, you really can't.
Yep.
All right. The other thing I wanted to ask you, it's more of a on the personal side, which is your first world championship. How was it? How was the trip? How was the match? How was
It
it
was
all?
awesome. It was awesome. So World Shoot uh, blew away every expectation I had. I will say USPSA did an outstanding job. And if I'll even name him, I know he's come under a lot of scrutiny over the last 4 or 5 years, but Leighton Oosthuizen, had obviously been had been selected as the regional director, in the U.S. for our IPSC team and things like that. But I felt he did great at being able to communicate everything that was important to all of the US delegation, all of the team shooters. The communication levels were set, like, I mean, he set a precedence for future future world shoot matches that's going to be tough to beat. I
Okay.
did a great job. Um, he gave us some warnings. Obviously, we all knew going to South Africa, the political climate there is a little iffy and things like that. He
Right.
definitely tried to make sure that we were all on the up and up, that security was going to be, and our safety was the number one priority. Like they'd hired private security details if we wanted to take advantage of those things, and, to travel in groups. And ultimately, when we got there, it the climate wasn't near as bad as I think a lot of us had predicted, and it was a great time. I mean, I haven't talked to one single person that went to World Shoot that was like, nope, I would never do South Africa again. I mean, everybody, really everybody that I know of had a great time, and I know myself, is kind of reflected in. I'd be looking forward to go back to South Africa sometime without it being a shooting competition, just to see more of the land, go do a hunting trip, go do more safaris. I mean, it was an epic time. It really was. The match itself, phenomenal. Organization to me, I could not even wrap my brain around how well logistics and organization run around a match that had, what was it, 1,900 to 2,100 competitors over two matches, a pre-match that was 5 days long, and then a main match that was 6 days long. And the main match had four rotations or four flights. So there was a 6:30 a.m. squad, a 9 a.m. squad, a noon squad, and a 3 p.m. squad. And there were 30 squads in each of those four flights. So that's 120 squads per day that staff was moving through at an absolutely just a breathtaking amount of time. I mean, you'd shoot 6 stages and be done and off the range in hour 45 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes max, and you still had the rest of your day to either watch other shooters shoot or go enjoy, extracurriculars and things. I mean,
Go
it was
wrestle a lion.
it was just incredible. It was incredible. I was a little surprised. It kind of, I'll be honest, like I thought the stages were a little simplistic in design, especially considering that, like, by the time you listen and watch everybody's videos from Thailand in the World Shoot in 2022, and you're like, oh man, there was a lot of partials and a lot of really cool bobbers and swinging plates and activators.
Sliders and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
and like, I mean, I think we did a great job in preparing for that. So like Matt Hopkins and the crew that came out and ran the U.S. IPSC Nationals last year at Cardinal Center, I think did a phenomenal job in really preparing all of the U.S. to, like, here's what we're probably going to face and expect in South Africa. And I think we were so, I don't want to say overcomplicated, but we were so ready after that difficult IPSC match that when we went to World Shoot, it was like, that's it. They're like one swinging plate. I mean, we shot like I think 20 of those damn swinging plate stages at IPSC Nationals, and then we go to World Shoot, and it was like one. you know, there were a couple of bobbers and a few swingers, but I mean, it felt like we were. I don't want to say overly prepared, but like I was more mentally prepared. And then to get there, it was like I don't want to say a letdown, but you were just like, oh man, I was expecting more like no shoot partials and some hardcover stuff, and everything was well within 10 to 12 yards. There wasn't a whole lot of targets or a whole lot of stages that had a lot of targets that exceeded 17 to 18 yards and beyond. A couple, but for the most part, for this being my first world shoot, maybe I played it up in my mind. It was going to be like, man, this will be crap I've never seen ever in my life before. So I need to be prepared for everything. And you get there and you're like, oh, this is it. Wow. Okay. Like I can do all this. And yeah, I mean, but it was good. So, and then, to qualify on the U.S. team and to get to be part of the U.S. Classic Division team and to help that team, win a team overall world championship. So all four of us, got to stand atop the gold medal podium and, take away a team world championship and watch my good buddy Jeff Cawthon finish second in the individual overall in Classic Division. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, it far exceeded any expectation I ever had. And I'm looking forward to Italy in 2029 to hopefully do it again.
Production value of it with the opening ceremonies, closing
Oh,
ceremonies, the
fabulous. I
build.
mean, it was unbelievable. Like everything from the parades and all of the countries being, being represented, and the South African people, were super welcoming, and I mean, restaurants, the wait staff was great, hotel staff. I mean, everybody was happy to have all the countries there to shoot the world shoot. You know, uh, in South Africa. I mean, it was great. It really was.
Did you have any wild critters in the on the property of where you stayed?
I did not. I stayed at the event, like our team hotel, which was kind of boring. It was there in Klerksdorp. I mean, uneventful, which is good. Uh,
Right.
I will say the hotel staff was pretty crazy. You'd be up at like 7 o'clock in the morning to go eat breakfast, and you would come back 20 minutes later, and your room was like the floors were swept, the floors were mopped, the walls were washed, your shower and bathroom was completely taken care of, your bedding was completely replaced, and oh, if you left a loose sock on the floor, they had did the laundry for you, and in the next day, your fresh laundry was like boop put on the corner of. I mean, it was put on the corner of your bed. They were like, oh yeah, your laundry. It was like 12 rand, which is like I don't know, like a buck 40 or something like that. It was crazy. I
I'm
mean,
going
but
to need the name of that hotel.
it was unbelievable. Closing ceremonies, the awards, trophy presentation, like everything. It was everything that you kind of hype it up in your mind to be. I mean, it truly did feel to me anyway. Now, granted, I've got very, very little experience in international competition, and this was my first ever world shoot in my 15 years of competing. But I was like, it felt like I was going to the Olympics. I mean,
Yeah,
a
that's what
lot
it looks like.
of pomp and circumstance, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean from the outside looking in, whether it was Thailand or South Africa, it's like, man, this is literally like the Olympics.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
can only imagine it's hyped up by 10, by a factor of 10 being there and in it.
it was.
So
It really like at some point in time, you just like you have to remember to like okay, breathe and just take things in. They're still just human beings. We're still just people. And oh, by the way, yeah, we still have to shoot a match. And by the way, that match is 30 stages over 5 days. So keep it dialed in. It was really cool. Staff,
I
I thought
feel
were great. ROs, I thought were great. I didn't have a single bad experience. Nothing that I could come back and be like, yep, that was terrible. I mean, I think the experience is what you make of it. And I planned on going and having a great time, and a great time was had.
Do you plan on doing any international shooting between now and then?
Between now and Italy in
To,
2029, yes.
okay.
So I would like to do what is it? The Australasian, the Australasia
That's a big one.
IFSC match. Yeah, that's a big one. There's a gentleman on YouTube, Thomas shoots, a Filipino shooter. I met Thomas, super great guy. I follow a lot of his YouTube stuff, and he really brought into the limelight what the Australasian was there. I was like, yep, got to go to that one. The European Extreme I would like to shoot. The European was it the European Championships I'd like to go shoot as well. There's a match that Joey Sauerland and I talked about that Joey went and shot. It was like 2 days in Poland.
Yes, and 30
40
stages in 2 days. Oh, 40, yeah.
20 stages a day in 2 days, 40 stages. I was like, that is insane. And Joey was like, it was awesome. And I'm like, okay, Chuck, I gotta sign up for that thing too. So
It sounds
yeah,
like a marathon. I
oh
mean, it
my
really
God.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
a
nuts.
lot of cool stuff that I would like to do. I'd like, obviously going to the World Shoot and meeting other people from other countries as well. And it's kind of neat how many people you don't know follow you, just through social media and stuff like that. So I'd spoken to a couple of the German guys on the German team that were like, oh, we watch all your stuff on YouTube. It's like, when can you come to Germany and teach a class? And I was like, you want me to come to Germany? I'm like, yeah, like, yeah, let's do this. So hopefully in the next year or two, being able to schedule, training over there to then also, like, if I can align training to kind
With a
of,
match.
yeah, be able to do
Yeah,
a couple of different matches over there would be super cool.
that would be wild. Because when I talked to Kay Lee, when I talked to Kay Lane,
Uh-huh.
she was saying, they plan on shooting at least a match in Italy to try to go over there and see what that's all about, so they have an idea before they get over there as well. So
Yep. Yep. And I'd like
I
to do the same thing.
from 2018 when I got in, and it might have just been the time that I got in, like the year after the last World Shoot, which was 2017.
Hmm.
That it kind of quiets down, I guess, that year after, and it kind of hypes up. But man, it seemed like the build up to Thailand was huge, especially with the delay. It kept getting delayed, so the build up was huge, and I just feel like there's way more light on it than there was when I first got in. And maybe it's just my perspective.
No, I would agree with you. And I think a lot of it too is participation numbers themselves, especially in USPSA. Um, like God, earlier, like when I started shooting in 2010, let's see, there was, I think it was Greece. Yeah. So the Greece World Championships, I think, were in the 2011, and then the next World Shoot was in 2014, and that was
Right.
in here in Florida, and then 2017 was France, and then 2020 was supposed to be Thailand, and it got pushed back to
Right.
2022. And so yeah, I had never even fathomed. Now, granted, as a first year shooter, I didn't even know what the heck the World Shoot was, when it was in Greece in 2011. But then by the time the World Shoot came and it was going to be in Florida in 2014, I didn't know enough about shooting, nor did I know enough about like the qualification process to qualify for the World Shoot, for France. I'm sorry, for Florida in the U.S. in 2014. But then by the time France rolled around, like I understood the qualification process, but by then I'm kind of some like personal stuff that kind of went on with me, as far as raising my kids and things like that, that took way deeper precedent over than me like,
Life.
qualify for a classic division team slot then. So after France, knowing that the next one was going to be in Thailand, I was all aboard. So I did follow the qualification process for Thailand. I was 1 point short of a team slot, so I was not of the four classic division team guys, but I did earn a slot as an individual. And so I had already paid my money. I was like, heck yeah, we're going to Thailand. And then, of course, as we all know, COVID happened. So the Thailand got pushed back to 2021. Well, then 2021, international travel restrictions were still a big problem with COVID. So it got pushed back to 22. Well, in 2020, when it was supposed to happen, man, I was bringing the family with me. Like my wife was going to come. My daughter was just a sophomore in high school. We were like, we're taking 2.5 weeks off of school and work. We're going to Thailand. It's going to be awesome. Fast forward to 2022. Now my daughter is a senior in high school, and my wife had switched jobs. So her PTO didn't allow her to take that much time off. And my daughter was vying for scholarships for college. And she was like, I can't
Mm.
2.5 weeks my senior year, Dad. So they were like, you're going to have to just go on your own. And I'm like, I'm not going to a third world country by myself to Thailand. And then, and by then, like, in fact, US didn't even field a classic division team that year because so many people gave back their slots because of the postponement. We just, so many people were just up in the air and had a lot of life changes. So 2022 came and went, and then when it was set in stone that 2025 would be the World Shoot in South Africa, there were a lot of people still kind of like, South Africa, I don't know, but I think there were a lot more seriousness in, hey, let's qualify for this thing, and it being World Shoot 20, right? So it was the 20th ever World Shoot, so there was a lot of neat historical markers to World Shoot in South Africa as well that I think a lot of people were interested in attending.
I think the only real question about South Africa was there was some political situation, some stuff going on, some crime stuff going on, but even 2022 Thailand, like I know Justine Williams gave back her stuff because there were still questions, it was still a touch and go thing up until the moment that it happened,
It certainly was.
maybe 60 days out they're finally like for sure this is happening. So
Yep.
there were still a lot of questions in that regard, but 2025 South Africa, that was solid. All you
Yep.
had to do was feel like it was safe enough. I kind of feel bad that the team Glock people like Morgan didn't get an opportunity to go, but it is what it is.
And I will say I'm kind of digging the new structure. So the World Shoot now being every 4 years instead of every three. So that gives 3 years interim for like team selection. So the team selection is still going to be based on the same criteria. So it'll be US IPSC nationals in the division that you declare. And then it'll be US PSA nationals in that same declared division as well. But instead of doing like best 5 out of 6, or like it's been in years past where it's your best 3 out of 4 of those qualifying events, it's now going to be the best 3 out of 6. And so talking to Leighton about that, I was like, well, why not make it longer? And he was like, okay, well, here's the best 3 out of 6 is going to help in a few cases. One, what happens if, like, whether it be let's dare I say a terminal illness, or you've got a kid, or a family
Jesse
member,
Harrison, she
right?
got pregnant,
Yeah, well, and
you
Megan
know?
Smiley, another, like Megan had
Yeah.
to do 2023 US IPSC nationals 7 or 8 months pregnant because she couldn't skip out on that one qualifying event to qualify for World Shoot, knowing it was going to be in 2 years when she wasn't pregnant, but having to shoot the match pregnant.
Right.
It's like, do we really want that liability?
Right.
So this gives an opportunity for people to not be like have to be set in stone. It's these best 3 of the 4.
Much more flexibility. Yeah.
The other thing it's going to allow too, since it's best 3 out of 6, is that you could technically qualify for 2 different divisions for 2 different slots for World Shoot. Now, granted, you've got to pick one, but this ultimately gives the US the greatest expanse of what shooters fill, what team slots best, so that we can hopefully go to Italy and reap the best rewards of earning the best chances for gold medals, which I think is great.
Kind of like Mason and Nils, how they
Right.
they both qualified for two different
Right.
divisions.
Production optics and production. And then it became like, well, what do we feel like we're best versed in? Okay, well, we're going to shoot production then. Right. And so, like, what I'll be I'll be a senior by the time the Italy World Shoot happens. So I'm looking at, like, for me personally, I'd like to qualify for the Classic Division overall team again, because I feel like I've got a little, like, I want to go defend our team world championship, but I also feel like I've got a little unfinished business as an individual shooter as well, but at the same time, limited optics, that's, or like optics division, that's going to be hard to qualify for. But qualifying for, say, limited or optics senior team may also fit. And depending on where I might be a better fit for either of those teams, will then ultimately kind of land me in, okay, Tim, you're going to be better in optics senior than you would be in classic overall. Or no, you're better fit for classic overall than optics senior. Give that senior slot to one of the other qualifying seniors. But it's so that we can, again, we can be able to play the delegation game a little bit better.
Right. And if you had a coach, let's pretend Leighton was not just the regional director, but a coach, then you can say, okay, I've got Tim who's qualified for both, but I need him in the classic division because I don't have as many people qualified on that side, and I have more than enough people qualified on the other. So now I
Correct.
can have a strong classic division and a strong limited optics division or
Exactly.
optics division. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's kind of the play over the next 3 years.
Okay.
And for those that don't want to try to play the two division qualification game, it just gives an opportunity for people not to have to feel like they are completely under the gun, to like, oh man, I'd love to take this big family vacation, but it's over the same time as Race Gun Nats, and I was looking to qualify next year, but now I have to shoot these qualifying events. It's going to give us a little more freedom for people that maybe aren't as solidified in their choices to qualify yet.
Right. And again, I like the fact that it gives people that flexibility where
I agree.
in a family crisis or whatever else is going on in your personal life, your daughter's graduating from high school or college at the
College,
time, you
right?
don't have to go and shoot race gun nationals. Now you can actually go to her
The
graduation and
pressure's off,
enjoy.
which
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
which is
Yeah,
nice.
100%. Well, Tim, was there anything else you wanted to say about the
Oh goodness,
scoring hit factor stuff before
I think
we call it a
I
night?
think we've covered it pretty in depth. So
Front, back, and sideways. Yeah.
the again, the numbers, when you really start to consider the things, are pretty eye opening. To really consider, when you consider that balance again, and understanding how to strike that balance. So for those that are hopefully listening to this podcast or tune in and then go back and maybe look at my post, yeah, I wasn't trying to stir the hornet's nest in saying that, like, what I'm advocating is slowing down to really focus on your points. What I'm saying is, obviously you need a blend of both, but ultimately what becomes a little bit more important, points. I mean, we see it over every single division. No matter how you want to try to exploit the numbers, the hard truths, the hard stats are, if you're not scoring the points, your time almost is insignificant to cover the spread on the points you're not shooting. So
Well, thanks
collect
for
those
coming
points.
on. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, Tim, I appreciate you coming on. It's always a good time.
Likewise, David, thank you so much for having me, sir.
You're very welcome. You have a good evening.
You too.